This is maybe my spiciest take as a public
Ooh.
speaking coach. I believe preparation is overrated. Or at the very least, it is misdefined. When we talk
Mm.
about preparation, I think we're talking about all of the wrong things. Preparation is great, but it's not scalable.
Hello, welcome to Hustle with Aloha. Sarah, I'm so glad to have you.
Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Specifically, also thank you for being willing to have a conversation about how we can help business owners and entrepreneurs show up as authentic and professional in public speaking because you are the owner and founder of Speak Masterfully.
I am, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about. So thanks for being willing to have that conversation.
I love it. I love it. And would you mind telling us about that background in the arts and how it led to you starting Speak Masterfully?
Yes, I would love to. So, my background is in theater. Theater is my first love. I saw The Wizard of Oz when I was 5 years old, and it was game over. I knew that was going to be the rest of my life. And so I pursued it in the collegiate level. I got my BFA in drama from NYU and graduated back in 2012, which feels like a lifetime ago. And I hit the New York theater scene and loved being on stage. I immediately went on tour with Peter Pan, which was a great time, and was doing the off Broadway circuit and hit a point about 3 years in where I was starting to feel really burnt out, where I loved being on the stage, but I don't know how many listeners have interacted with actors before, but it can be a pretty feast or famine industry.
I
So
have
you
heard
might
that.
be riding high in a show one week, even a Broadway show, and then next week the show closes and you're back to babysitting, waiting tables, all the things that actors
Right,
do to keep the lights on.
right.
So I was starting to hit that point that I think a lot of people can relate to in the professional world as well, where they're starting to feel that burnout and they're feeling like the thing I'm doing in the day to day isn't using my skill sets or my passions in the way that I want. So, like many people, I was thinking, what do I do? How can I actually make an impact with these skills that I've spent my whole life honing? And fortunately for me, my best friend at the time was an entrepreneur because entrepreneurship was not on my radar at all. And this friend of mine, who is a brilliant copywriter and owns her own business, said, tell you what, I'm going to this 3 day business conference. Come with me, talk to some of these women. I think you'll be inspired.
Wow. That's like
Yeah. And
drinking from the fire hose. You just jumped in. That's
oh,
awesome.
and it felt like drinking from the fire hose. So I showed up to this conference and it was indeed inspiring, but it was also incredibly intimidating because I was having all of these conversations with these brilliant founders who had created their own businesses or nonprofits and were equal parts inspiring and intimidating. But here's the turning point, and this is actually where Speak Masterfully came from. On day 3 of this conference, there was an opportunity for the business owners to speak with the keynote speaker to come up to the mic, talk about their businesses, and ask their questions. And I
I love
see
it.
you're laughing now because you probably are understanding the punchline that's about to happen, which is I watched these business owners one by one walk up to the microphone and shrink.
Oh, yes.
These brilliant, inspiring women who I'd been conversing with for the last 3 days, suddenly the shoulders were up, the voices were quavering, hands were shaking, and they were absolutely dynamic in these one on one conversations. But in front of a crowd, they did not know how to talk about themselves, their
Mm.
businesses, and their story. And that was the moment when I went, oh, I now know what I want to do. I want to help professionals and business owners share their story in a way that is authentic and dynamic without their hands shaking and their voices
Yeah.
trembling because I believe and I knew these women had a story to tell and all
Mm.
they needed were the tools to tell it as themselves.
You said some really important words in there too. I heard story a lot because I want to remind you that you told me you don't just act, you write for people too. And you are a playwright as well, right?
I am the one thing that has been constant throughout my life is I am obsessed with stories and getting in
Mm.
there and learning how they work. And you know, oh my goodness, you know, as a as a branding person, and there is nothing more persuasive than a well-told story. So I learned a
100%.
lot of the mechanics of storytelling, studying acting and playwriting, but storytelling, it's everywhere in every industry. It is the water we are swimming in. And so I love
Oh,
getting
I
in the
love
weeds with
that.
entrepreneurs and talking about their story and how to make it connect with others.
Yes. I like to say that as humans, we're wired to remember story. That's why we call it history, like his story. It's not like his bullet points or his facts.
Hmm.
So you said something really interesting in one of our conversations that you see public speaking as like the intersection of the arts and entrepreneurship. Um, and how important it is to show up as authentic because just being professional can be boring, which sounds like a total duh. But I think it's really hard to give people advice on how to be authentic because it's like, oh, just be yourself. And the person is like, well, I'm already physically made up of cells that are myself. So what do you mean? So do you think we could unpack that a little bit
Oh, I
about
would
what it means
love
to
to
be
unpack that because I
authentic?
think
Okay.
be authentic is an impossible note. Like, when it says you said about be yourself, I have no other choice. I am being myself. I
Right. I'm
think
just
what
boring
gets
right
in,
now.
I have like, who do you think I'm being in this moment? But I think the problem that comes up for people when we think that person isn't being authentic, they don't
Mm.
sound like a person, the underlying problem is nerves. It's not that we have trouble being ourselves. We are ourselves 24/7, but it's the when our nervous systems are activated,
Mm.
that's when we stop breathing, when we stop listening, when we stop connecting to our audience, and when we sometimes try to play dress up and be like, I'm going to be a leader or I'm going to be a
I love that.
professional. And we try to hit the target of what we think that looks like. And
Mm.
often it comes across as disingenuous when really I think what's usually happening is people are just nervous and getting in their own way.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, I'm nervous all the time myself. I think the problem is that my personality it just wins. So no matter what, I'm just gonna be my weird self. I don't have a lot of control over it. But you made a really also a great comment earlier too about how like over preparation can kind of ruin the connection that you have with the audience, like
Yeah, this is
memorization and stuff like that.
this is maybe my spiciest take as a public
Ooh.
speaking coach. I believe preparation is overrated. Or at the very least, it is misdefined. When we talk
Mm.
about preparation, I think we're talking about all of the wrong things. And this happens all the time when I'm talking to a prospective client. They'll go, I'm not a bad public speaker as long as I have time to prepare. And then I go, oh, well, that's great. How often do you feel like you have time to prepare? And then they go,
That's a really good question.
almost never,
Right.
right? And that's the thing is most people when they talk about preparation, what that looks like is writing everything we're going to say word for word, spending
Index
hours.
cards, right?
Yes, index cards. Oh my goodness, the conversations I've had about slide decks where
Mm.
80% of the time goes into building the slide deck and then 20% goes into what do
Just
I want
reading
to
it.
say?
Right.
Yeah. So when we're talking about preparation, preparation is great, but it's not scalable. If
Mm.
your version of preparation is I'm going to write everything out word for word and I'm going to rehearse it over and over and over again, that can be a winning strategy if you do two speaking events a year. If you're trying to speak on panels every other week, that's not
Ooh,
going to be a winning strategy for
panels.
you. So I like to say that preparation is great, but skills are scalable
I
because
think you,
all,
sorry, go
no,
ahead.
please.
I think you just like really struck a nerve with probably me and a lot of people that there's all these public speaking events that you don't have control over. Like you can know that you're going to speak and then prepare for it and have notes and a bullets and the spreadsheet and the note cards. But a panel discussion is like throwing you to the wolves. That's really interesting. How do you prepare people for panel discussions? Or do they usually like give the questions ahead of time and you kind of help them prepare?
It depends. And while best practices, like to let you all have a peek behind the curtain, Alicia very kindly sent me some questions she might ask today before this conversation. We're probably not going to talk about all of them. And in
Probably
fact, we've
not.
already ducked and weaved and hit a few other
Yeah,
things.
sorry.
No, no, I invite that. And I think that if you want to only hit the questions that you're prepared to answer, one, you're giving up an opportunity for some beautiful discoveries and
Mm.
for the conversation to evolve organically. And also, you are going to be a deer in the headlights if you get thrown a curveball. So, the skill
Mm,
that I would rather work on with my clients is how to breathe and listen and stay present, which is all improv skills, so that they can follow the opportunities when the conversation gets juicy in another direction and feeling like they,
yeah.
instead of feeling like they need to rigidly stick to their script.
Yeah. I love that. And also, I mean, I think I remember you mentioning you work with people who are like attorneys and like HR directors and stuff like that. I mean, they have to think on their feet and it's really important how they come across, right?
It's true. I would say 70% of my coachings are preparing people for impromptu speaking.
That's a
Most of us
lot.
start, it is, it's a lot. And that ratio changes from time to time, but not a lot of us are giving prepared PowerPoint presentations day in and day out. The bulk of the speaking that we're doing is on the fly. So,
Mm,
how do you build the skills to be as effective when you have 30 seconds to prepare as when you have 3 months of lead time?
right. Do you have any like nuggets or hacks or aha moments that you can pull out of your toolkit for us?
Oh,
Or am
I
I
have
asking for too
so
much?
many, but
Ooh, okay.
I'll
Ready.
share the number one thing that I've noticed during
Okay.
a Q&A or a panel discussion, the thing that gets in people's way. And that's once you see this, you can't unsee it.
I
Watch
know.
during the next panel discussion. Most people, while they are being asked a question, hold their breath because they're bracing for the unknown. And what happens is usually they're holding their breath and you see they're trying to formulate the answer before the person has even finished their question.
Mm,
This is such an understandable impulse, but it's what's usually causing people to ramble because we realize we've started answering the question before we fully heard it. And
right.
then we just in a panic are like, if I say enough words, eventually, hopefully, I'll hit on the thing they asked
Like
me.
midstream, you decide you're going to say something else to try to
Yes.
shift it towards that one.
And again, it's a product of nerves and a lack of trust that if you could just breathe and listen when the person is asking the question, it will be so much easier for you to come up with the answer. But it feels scary to do. It feels really scary to just go, my only responsibility while I'm being asked this question is to breathe and listen. But you will
Wow.
have so much more polished of an answer if you do it. But it is a leap of faith.
Yeah. And I think, well, I grew up in the Midwest where I shouldn't blame the entire Midwest, but growing up, I was raised that a good conversation flows. And if there's a pause, it's my job to fill it. And
Mm.
so sometimes I think when I listen to other people and they're asked a question and they take a moment to like consider it, everybody's waiting. They're the expert, right? Like there's nothing wrong with collecting yourself probably before you answer. And in fact, you might look more intelligent.
I always love seeing a pause on stage. To me, that's not the sign of a rookie speaker. That's usually an advanced speaker because they're not afraid to take their space and take their time. And you'll see this too. So if we are asked a question and then someone takes a full inhale before they start answering, because this is another soapbox of mine. We don't breathe, and breathing really helps us when we are doing public speaking. One of the secondary definitions of inspiration, the word inspiration is inhalation. So if you're not breathing, you cannot get inspired. If you've
Yeah,
ever had that deer in the headlights moment where you can't remember your next slide or the next thing you wanted to say, 9 times out of 10, it's because you are holding your breath and you cannot
so
come up with the
funny.
next thought when you are holding your breath.
Yeah. And like inspiration and respiration. I mean, there's probably like some sort of, I didn't take Latin, but there's got to be some sort of like commonality,
Yes,
right?
inspiration is it's just one of the secondary definitions is an inhale. Inhalation
Oh,
and inspiration are synonyms.
I didn't know that I was accidentally understanding that before you
Yes,
re-explained
you
it.
100% understood it.
That's funny. So what do you think is a great way to strike the balance between preparation and like letting go? Because you don't want to like
Mm.
not prepare, right?
Yes, you don't want to be on the other end of the spectrum where you just show up to your TED Talk and you go, you know what? I'll wing it.
Ta-da! Yeah, no. Let's not
I think,
encourage people to do that.
no, let's not have that be the pull quote from this interview. I think, and with all of this, it's context specific. You're going to prepare differently for a TED Talk than for a panel discussion.
Right.
But the one non-negotiable piece of preparation that I recommend to all my clients is in any speaking situation, the first thing you want to think about is who am I talking to and what do I want them to do or feel as a result of
Yes,
this
yes, yes.
conversation? Because I think setting an objective like that, that is our North Star. From there, you can create your outline, you can create your talking points. But sometimes we get an assignment and we start putting our slides together before we've paused and thought, who am I talking to? What do I want them to do or feel as a result of this talk?
I love that. It so dovetails nicely with like brand strategy and marketing and what I do because a lot of times when people are interacting with a brand or even listening to a podcast or a TED talk, they want to get something out of it. Like literally, they want to get something out of it, not just
Hmm.
like, no, this has value, but if something that has value, you walk away with like an aha moment or like a feeling or your perspective has changed or you learned something. Um, and the same thing with marketing, you want to communicate something. You're not just there to like have a poem or to make something look pretty. Um, so I love that. Do you do you have any like ideas about how to help people channel the audience or any like things that are hallmarks of a good story or a good path to get from like the hook to the meandering forest to the action?
Mm. Yeah, when it comes to storytelling, I like to reverse engineer a story. So, starting
Ooh.
with that objective of why am I telling this story? What do I want them to do or feel as a result of this story? Because, like you said, otherwise it's just a tone poem, and why are we telling it? So,
I love
starting with
that.
what do I want the moral of the story to be? And then from there, I think a good rule of thumb is where is the climax? And the climax is the moment of greatest conflict to think of this another way, because really, your elevator pitch is also an opportunity for storytelling. And you want to be able to let the audience picture the problem.
Mm,
And I also believe that people are hardwired for story. And this is just one of those storytelling hacks that's really important, is we tend to remember conflict. And if we want the audience to emotionally resonate with the climax of the story, the moment of greatest conflict, they need to be able to picture it. Because the
mm.
part of our brain that processes images is about 45,000 years older than the part that processes written language.
I believe
So, if
that.
we want the audience to have an emotional reaction to what we're describing, they need to be able to picture it.
I love that. That totally makes sense.
And I'm sure you help your clients with this all the time. What is the problem? What is the pain point?
Mhm.
How can we paint the picture of that?
That's really interesting because I usually encourage them to think about what's the positive emotion that they want to inspire in their target audience and that be like the carrot that is dangled,
Mm,
so to speak. Um, because at least in marketing, I think a lot of times people are already expecting the brand to be like, you're suffering, aren't you? Oh, you wish your life was better, don't you? You know? But
sure.
if the brand leads with, man, I know what it feels like to X, Y, and Z. And we deliver this, which is like this golden desired state of the
Mm.
opposite that they're feeling. Um, that's really interesting. I never really thought about it that way. But
Well, you
I
know what's
talk a
so fascinating to me? I love that. What I found with my clients is they have no problem coming up with a solution, the benefits of what they offer, because most of us are solutions oriented people. I
Mhm.
find they have more trouble coming up with language around the problem. And
Huh.
that purely from a story perspective, we remember the problem better because our brains are hardwired to remember the problem. It's more important that our brains remember which of those berries are poison from a survival perspective. So I think being able to paint the picture of the solution and the hope is so important, especially if that's part of your brand that you want to be seen as someone who is positive and solutions oriented. But purely from a story mechanics perspective, I think a lot of us are uncomfortable talking about the problem, and the problem is
Mm.
really sticky for the brain.
Interesting. Yes, absolutely. I usually split it up into kind of like three things. The obviously the problem that you solve and any other solution to the problem that you solve is actually the
Mm.
competition. And sometimes doing nothing is a really insidious competitor, unfortunately. Um,
Ooh.
yeah. But it's the intangible benefits, the tangible benefits, um, and then also like what you're actually delivering. So intangible benefits are like emotions or this aligns with my lifestyle or something like that. And then the tangible benefits are like the bullet points to like that back that up. They're the reasons to believe. But studies show that usually as consumers, I hate that term, as customers, we're driven to make a purchase with our emotions and our heart. So we
Hmm.
make the decision like emotionally, and then we look for rational reasons to justify the decision that we've already made.
Yep.
um, that's really interesting. I love this. Sorry, I don't want to go too far down
No,
this rabbit hole.
and you see, that's where you and I are different because I'm like, ooh, let's follow that rabbit hole. That is so fascinating to me. But I think it
Yeah.
brings us back to story again, because this is something I teach my clients in terms of persuasive storytelling. When we make decisions, we make those decisions emotionally. And one of the fastest ways to get emotional buy-in from an audience is to tell them a story.
Hmm.
So it all comes full circle. Look at these intersecting rabbit holes.
I love it. I love it. And I love it too that it's not just about the emotions and the journey that you take people on, but the delivery of it and also the words. Because
Mm.
when you choose words, you cast spells, you know? And I think when it comes to speaking and acting and playwriting and stuff like that, they have to be even more carefully selected because if the person didn't catch it, you can't go back and read it again.
I love that insight. And as a lifelong word nerd, I really truly relate to that. And it's interesting. I find that's a big struggle when I'm working with attorneys or authors, folks who, like me, do love the written word.
Yeah.
Because when we are writing, we do have the option to go back and pick the perfect word and do a red line and do a revision. And we have to let go of a lot of that perfectionism when we're doing public speaking, because if you can't retrieve the exact word that you need to have the
So
flexibility to
frustrating.
go,
Yeah.
but you know what? There's 26 letters in the alphabet, and I can find another word.
Yes, yes. I was given some interesting advice so many years ago, and it has truly impacted my business. I was supposed to be doing just like a video about my company, and it was supposed to be captivating and blah blah blah. And the videographer, instead of like, I thought that he wanted me to just come show up with a script, but he said before we got started, he needed me to come up with 10 truisms that I held to be true that were fairly unique within the marketplace. That
Mm.
when you said them, maybe the other person kind of raised their eyebrows and want an explanation. I was like, are you
Mm.
flipping kidding me? What do you think? I am a magician? Like, this is insane. And it took me like months, but I did it. And I still use some of them today. And they have to be short. Do you ever do you ever have anything like that you like, do you prime your people who have to speak on the spot with like, I don't know, some core truths or like how do they remember what to say?
Yeah, usually the way I refer to it with my clients is sound bites. Like, what is the one sentence distillation of the point that you're making? We can use an example from earlier in this interview. Preparation is overrated. That's kind of a surprising statement, and you go, I don't know, explain yourself.
Eyebrow
But there
raised,
are,
want to hear more. Yeah.
right. So I like to think of them as sound bites, where if we were just taking a 10-second clip out of context, people would want to keep on listening. Now, I think the problem is a lot of speakers come up with their sound bites and then they don't go deeper, which
I
is
could
why
see
I
that.
think starting with what is my objective? What do I want people to do or feel as a result of this talk? And like you said, thinking about what do I want their takeaways to be? How can I be of service to the audience? And then from there, that's when you can come up with your sound bites, because they are useful things to have and they're nice to have in your back pocket. But I think sometimes people stop short. They go, all right, I have my sound bites and I'm good to go. And there also needs to be deeper substance
An
within those.
explanation. That's
right?
funny. I love your tone of voice when you said, I've got my sound bites and I'm ready to
I've got
go.
my sound bites and I'm good to go.
So excellent. That's awesome. Um, so you still work in theater though, even though you are coaching these people and you coach, I think you said you do corporate workshops and then also one-on-one. Is that right?
That's right. And my practice is entirely on Zoom, this hot new technology the kids are using. Which the wonderful thing about that with my private clients is when I go on tour, if I do a regional gig, they come with me. As long as I have a
Awesome.
stable Wi-Fi connection, I can keep my coaching practice going. And my working with non-actors feeds my acting career, and my career as an actor feeds what I bring back to my clients. So there's been a really wonderful give and take with those two parallel careers. Sometimes people call their second job their survival job. I think of these as
Mm.
parallel careers that really help each other and are both
Mm.
wildly satisfying. So that's my private clients. And then for my corporate clients, I do workshops on storytelling, presentation skills, and improv skills that are
Oh,
available
fun.
both on Zoom and in person. For a corporate workshop, I'll show up in person and you'll see what's happening below my standard Zoom.
We'll learn that you're actually 6'5".
You'll realize I'm actually have a commanding stature.
How you said something that really like stuck with me with the side job. What did you call it? The survival job?
Parallel career versus a survival
Mm,
job. In the theater industry, a lot of times folks refer to their non-theater job as their survival job.
let's try not to have that. Let's have the people who are listening know that they just need to be a little bit more creative about translating the arts into something that can be totally lucrative and quote unquote realistic, like it's not such at the whim of um, what's on Broadway and stuff like that, literally.
And I 100% to what you just said, and also that it's okay to have multiple streams of income. I think
Totally.
one of the great things that came out of the pandemic is, at least in the theater industry, people are more willing to talk about the other things that they do in addition to theater. They've always been happening, but I think people were a lot shyer pre-pandemic
Mm,
of, I don't want to admit that I'm also waiting tables or that I'm also teaching. And the truth of the matter is, even people who have been in multiple Broadway shows, they are doing other things. They are also teaching at universities. They are finding other ways to utilize their skill set to have stability in their lives. So I'm a
yeah.
big proponent and talk about all the things you're doing, and those things feed each other. It's not a failure to be doing more than one thing.
I agree. And also, I mean, it's kind of like diversifying not only your revenue streams, but your like mental bandwidth. Like sometimes you get
Yes.
sick of doing something. I remember when I was working a corporate job, I used to like fantasize about being a barista. Sounded like it
Yeah.
would be so fun and like basic. And I'm sure I was wrong, but sometimes it's good to mix things up.
It's good to work different parts of your brain. And also, in terms of diversification, I started Speak Masterfully in 2018. And then something happened in 2019, 2020 that was not great for the theater industry, was not great for a lot of industries, but I was very
Ooh,
grateful to have a business when there
before.
was no live performing opportunities. My industry dried up for a couple years, and I was extremely grateful to have other work that I found satisfying and fulfilling and that I could do from the safety of my apartment.
Wow. Yeah, that's some timing. And how
Whew.
interesting that you went to like an entrepreneur meetup and just heard other people's stories, which is kind of what I'm hoping this podcast does too. Like, I think when you hear the different ways that people rethink like what it means to make a buck, like there's so many ways in this world to make a buck,
Yeah.
you know, and you could have four of them or two of them or one. And I just it's difficult for entrepreneurs. We don't have like a water cooler, we don't have an
True.
office and a water cooler where we get together and cluster. So I think the water cooler becomes podcasts and conferences like the one that you went to and stuff like that.
I couldn't agree more. And it opens up possibilities for people. I never in a million years would have thought that entrepreneurship was an option for me until my kind friend said, show up and have some conversations, hear some stories. You might surprise yourself. And here we are all these years later having this conversation. But I think
Isn't that
until you hear
interesting?
someone's story, you may not be able to see the possibilities that are out there.
100%. I love it. And you're still involved in theater today. Like, what does that look like? Where can we like see, hear, read that part of your life?
That is such a kind question. You can find out more about me on stage, not as a public speaking coach, at saraglancy.com, saraglancy.com. I am singing in a concert next month. Again, with this theater industry, it's when I have something to announce, I'll announce it on the website. But there's always things going on behind the scenes that may or may not become public. I
Mm.
also love more than anything developing new works. So a lot of times the processes that I'm involved in are something you might see on stage in a couple years, but it's right now, it's in the writing and development phase. So the stuff that I'm currently working on may not be in front of an audience for a little bit, but it's so fun to be in on those projects when they're still changing and evolving and we're tweaking those stories.
I bet. What do you read, or do you go see plays, or how do you like nourish that part of your brain and scratch that itch from works that already exist out there?
Yeah, I'm a huge theater lover. I've got my running log of how many shows I've seen this year. I think I'm at
Oh no.
50 for live performances I've seen this year.
And for those listening, this is the end of September, so
This
she's
is
doing
the end
pretty
of
good.
September. Also, I live in New York, so there's a lot of opportunities, and I'm plugged into a lot of networks where they're like, we're doing an invited staged reading, or we need ushers this night. So I'm not
Oh,
spending Hamilton bucks out going to the theater every night, though that sounds lovely.
for
So
you.
just seeing theater feeds me. I also love the Libby app, which is the library app where you can get books on tape. I'm on a
Oh,
Malcolm Gladwell kick at the current moment. But the number one book that I recommend to all my clients, and I reread it maybe once a year, is Wired for Story by Lisa Cron,
mm,
which I know you would dig if you read it. It's all about storytelling mechanics and why stories work on our brains the way they do.
I love it. I already have her written down from our previous conversation, and if you didn't mention it, I was going to remind
Oh,
you
I
because,
appreciate it.
yeah, I'm really, it's totally on my list. Um, and then, so are there any Are there any other ways that people should get in touch with your business? You mentioned sarahglancy.com, but does that encompass your business and your theater activity or?
No, if you're looking for public speaking tips, don't go to sarahglancy.com. That's going to be a bunch of singing videos. Where you should go if you're interested in learning more about public speaking and storytelling is speakmasterfully.com. And also, that's where folks can reach me if they're interested in working with me privately or bringing me in for a corporate workshop. If you go to /strategy dash session, that's where they can book some complimentary time with me where they can talk about their specific goals as a public speaker or storyteller. And I can point them in the direction of some resources to get closer to those goals.
That's amazing. And I'll make sure all of these links are in the whatever it is, show notes or the
Appreciate
YouTube
you.
thing,
Yeah.
wherever this is consumed. Well, gosh, is there anything else that you kind of were thinking we might touch on that we didn't talk about yet that you want to leave us with?
Well, here's the thing. I've loved every rabbit hole we've gone down, and we now have this beautiful network of rabbit holes. There is nothing that we didn't talk about that I wished we hit. It was really lovely speaking with you and connecting. I guess the ending note that I want to leave people with, because again, I set my objective before we came into this conversation, is whether you are an introvert, an extrovert, or any vert in between, you have a story to tell, and all you need are the tools to tell it.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. You're truly amazing. Every time I hear you talk, it's exciting. And to have a conversation with you and have it recorded so that we can help everybody is like so many cherries on top. I'm covered in cherries. Thank you so much.
Delicious. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. I'll catch you later. Bye. Thank you.
That was so fun. Thanks for having me.